Hey guys, welcome to FunNGun. We finally got all our parts in here for Project Warhawk to get it all put together here. And we're gonna go ahead and go over the parts that I mentioned in part 2 of the video that would be in this part of the video. And then we'll get into the few parts that I added that kind of made this escalate a little bit quickly, as you've seen there in the title of this video. So we're gonna start off here with our ZevTech Pro magwell for the OZ9. And that being the smaller of the two magwells they make. And this magwell is a little bit difficult to get. I actually originally had it on back order from Optics Planet because I couldn't find it in stock anywhere. But I actually ended up getting an email from Zev in the process of waiting on it to come in. And it was actually a little bit cheaper to get it from Zev, so I went ahead and canceled it and picked it up from Zev and got it a little bit quicker as well. So magwell is definitely a nice piece in my opinion. It was a little expensive, it was about 90 bucks, but kind of completes the lower half of the gun, seeing as this particular grip was actually cut for the magwell. So not only does it look better in my opinion, you actually have a nice flared magwell, so you can do reloads a little bit easier. And this being aluminum versus the bottom of the frame being plastic, this is going to protect the frame as well. So that's also a nice bonus. So magwell definitely ended up being a nice upgrade in my opinion. So let's go ahead and get into the next part here is the Tango Down slide stop slide catch here. As you've seen the recent video or the previous video, I had a factory Glock one in there because that's what I had, and it was just a real pain to lock the slide open manually or drop the slide. So I mentioned that I was going to change it, and this is the one I ended up picking up. And what makes this one so much nicer is I'll go ahead and show you my 17L here because it's a little easier to see, is how wide it is, and it actually tapers inward towards the frame at the bottom of it. And what that allows you to do on this particular gun is you can get your thumb underneath it and lock the slide back nice and easily. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and show you the gun is currently unloaded. As you seen there a second ago, there's no magazine in the magwell. And once you get the slide locked open, this slide stop slide catch is way wider than a factory Glock slide stop. So if you're looking for an extended slide stop slide release, the Tango Down, in my opinion, is one of my favorite ones, and it also makes it very easy to release the slide during a reload because of how big of a ledge you have there. So definitely a good upgrade in my opinion. I think I paid about 30 bucks for that, but that's definitely a nice part. So let's go into the part that made this video take a little longer to get out than I was expecting, is the DPM recoil system. This is the 3-stage system, and this part took forever to get, almost a month, because I had to get it from overseas to get the soft version of it where I'd get all the springs I was looking to have. And as you can see right here in this picture, this is a picture of the guide rod itself. And you actually have one of your 3 springs and 2 of your 3 springs inside of the guide rod itself. And we'll go ahead and pop the gun apart here in a second to show you that. But this is the springs you get with this kit. It actually comes with 5 of them when you get the soft version. This says it's for competition load, so you can tune the spring rate to whatever load you have. So you get all the springs. I currently have the softer of the 5 springs installed into the gun, and it has been running perfectly fine that way. So let's go ahead and, like I said, gun is unloaded. I'm going to take the slide off here and give you a little bit of a closer look at that. As you can see right there, that is the ledge where this part of the guide rod actually slides into the rear half of the guide rod here, and then that part will slide over this spring when it is cycling, and that is where you get your 3 stages of your spring rate from. And another part we got here that I'm going to go ahead and talk about while I'm under here is something I just kind of randomly came across and was actually pretty impressed with. This is a Strike Industries shock buffer, and this is a $10 part, and you get 2 of them. You get the black one and the red one. They're 2 different rates of compression, I guess. Not particularly, I can't remember which one of the 2 is which. One of them softer than the other one. You can find that on their website, but just went ahead and went with the black one. And the reason I was actually impressed with this part is because I noticed it when shooting it and just handing this gun to my buddy without telling him it was in there. One of the first things he said when shooting this gun is how the actual recoil assembly comes back and it's kind of a dead blow. There's no shock of the slide hitting the rear of its stroke and cycling the gun. And that is because this buffer goes ahead and takes that out of it. And we'll get into that a little bit more when I put the slide back on it. But if you're thinking that this is going to take away from the ability for the slide to go all the way back, you actually, this gun, when I had it installed in it, the way this slide's cut out and everything, you can actually see the buffer sitting down in it. And there's actually a gap that's the same size as this buffer, maybe just a little bit smaller. The buffer has to be a little larger to do its job, but that gap allows for this to compress into it and go back so you don't lose any of the travel of the slide. So that's not a big deal. The gun still locks open just fine. And like I said, it's worth it just for the fact that it's $10. And if you just have a factory Glock and you come across some of these, I'd recommend giving them a go. Definitely pretty cool how it makes the action of the gun feel when it's cycling. So another benefit to that is if you're shooting it suppressed, it kind of deadens the slide hitting the rear of the stroke and kind of clanking a little bit. So that's also a pretty cool plus to that. And that buffer and the DPM systems in combination with the Radian Ramjet here, and this is where the whole kind of thing kind of escalated a little bit here, because I had mentioned getting this in one of the other videos and kind of talking about how I didn't really want to spend the money on it because it was kind of expensive. And as you can see here on the box, these are usually $380, and that's with usually shipping and tax. And why I ended up picking this up was I was at a gun show and come across a guy that had one, and as you can see, that's what he had it listed at. And after talking to him, he said he would sell it to me for $350 out the door. So I kind of walked around the gun show for a little while and pondered on it a little bit, and I'm glad I went back and got it from him, because this system does exactly what it says it's going to do, and it definitely makes this gun a very soft shooting gun, even without the DPM system or the buffer in it. Just a factory Glock recoil assembly. This gun did cycle just fine, and it was quite soft shooting and flat shooting at that. So with the Radian Ramjet in combination with the buffer and the 3-stage recoil assembly, this gun is awesome. Yep, that's the terminology I'm going with. This is awesome. It's the best I've got, and it's definitely one of the softest, flattest shooting guns I have now. So all that combined definitely ended up paying off, so that's pretty cool. Another thing here that I originally wasn't planning on doing right off the bat here was putting a red dot on it, but at the same gun show, I come across a guy that I've dealt with quite a few times, and he cut me a deal on a Holosun 507 competition here. Ended up picking it up for $320, so couldn't pass that deal up either. So that's why I say this kind of escalated a little bit quickly. Kind of got to that one gun show and spent quite a bit of money on this, but it turned out so cool. I can kind of live with it, I guess. But let's go ahead and get into a few other things here. I do still have the threaded barrel that you've seen in the other two videos, the 9X19 barrel. Not planning on getting rid of this. I'm still going to use this barrel when I shoot this gun suppressed, because if you don't know how the Radiant works, it's not actually threaded underneath there. This is slipped on. It's got a pin that goes through it to lock it on the other side here. So I'm going to keep this around for shooting it suppressed. And that's also a nice thing about these springs here, is when I go to shoot it suppressed, I'll be able to dial it in to get it to cycle properly with the can hanging on the end of it. So did not get rid of the other barrel. And I did have to change the mag bases. I used to have ghost mag bases on all my mags, and that was just because they were cheap, and I wanted all my bases to be the same, because I have a few Gen 3 and a few Gen 2 mags, and the bases are a little bit different, but that's another thing. But end up picking these up because the Ghost magazine bases do not fit into the magwell here, and these fit just fine and actually look pretty clean in my opinion. These are made by a company called Aggressive Arms. I believe I paid about $15 a piece for these, so about 60 bucks for 3 of them off eBay. Not too bad for a nice aluminum base plate that I ended up having to get to make it work with this magwell. And when I get into the price that I have on or what I have in this gun, total price wise, I don't include these base plates because I use them on all my magazines that I also use in the 17L, so didn't really see that as part of this particular build, is the fact that I use it between both guns. And another thing I figured I'd go ahead and cover is by a company called, let's see, it is called Dream Plastics. You can pick these little covers up off eBay. You get a pack of 2 of them for like 15 or 20 bucks, and definitely something that's pretty cool. This one's actually cut out to clear the rear sight and the front of the slide. and it just goes ahead and gives you a little bit of protection on your red dot when you got it stored, if you're carrying it to the range, and it just keeps a little bit of dust out of off the lens as well. So definitely something pretty cool I like to pick up for my red dots there. Just figured I'd go ahead and throw that in. So let's go ahead and get into a few other things that I did to the internals of this gun since the last video. If you watched part 2 there, you heard me talking about getting the pre-travel screw in the Timney trigger stuck with Loctite and not being able to adjust it. I have figured out how to fix that. I went ahead and heated the screw up with a small torch and got it to where it would break loose and got it to adjust to where I want it and lock back in place. So the trigger shoe now just has a little bit of motion, just enough to allow for the trigger dingus, that's what I call it, to get out of the way without dragging, so you can get the trigger prepped. And that is one of the best parts of this gun, is the Timney trigger. If you've never messed with one of the Timney triggers, well, they're awesome once you get them set up the proper way. And I'll go ahead and show you that right now. So, like I said, the gun's still unloaded. You got just a little bit of take up, that's it right there. You're on the wall, nice break, just a little bit of travel in the trigger to break, and a nice reset. And that is the whole motion of the trigger. And in my opinion, the Timney trigger, the way I have it set up here, if you want to see what other internal parts I have, what connector I used, what safety plunger and everything I used in this gun to get it this way, and what I did to set it up, you can watch part 2 if you haven't watched that yet. I go over more of the trigger. But the Timney trigger here, out of all the striker fire triggers I've ever messed with, is, in my opinion, the best. And I've shot quite a few different Glock triggers, and I guess the closest thing I would say is probably a Canic Rival trigger. And you can get those with one of my buddies got one of those with a spring kit in it. You can get them down pretty close to this. So that being a factory trigger, this being an aftermarket trigger, this is definitely one of the best striker triggers you can get. So if you have a Glock and you're wondering what trigger to get, the Timney trigger is the one I would recommend going with. And I will also go ahead and say that I did try the Johnny Glock reset spring in it originally, and actually ended up putting the red spring that came with the Timney trigger back into this particular gun. And that is because with the red spring, you get about a 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 pound trigger pull. With that spring, with the Johnny Glock spring, you feel like you're getting about a 4 to 4.5 pound trigger pull. And since I wasn't looking to carry this gun, I wanted to have the best trigger possible. I went ahead and put the red spring back in it. But I will say, this gun is unloaded, that I did install one of the Johnny Glock trigger springs into the 17L here, and that is because this particular trigger, in my opinion, was a little bit light to start with, and by putting the Johnny Glock trigger spring in it actually kind of bounced it out nicely, and it feels very similar to this trigger now. So really, depending on which setup you go with, or however your gun reacts to the trigger being in it, you may or may not need the spring. But I'll also go ahead and get into a few other things on the inside here I did to smooth this trigger out even more than it already was, and it helped it reset as well. So let me go ahead and take the slide off this again. We'll talk about that just a little bit here. Okay, so the few things that I did on the inside of the slide here, or the frame here, is on the part that rides on the safety plunger here, on the bottom of the slide, I went ahead and deburred it with a file, kind of sanded it smooth, and then polished with the Dremel tool. And I did the same thing to the back part of the trigger bar that engages on the connector here. And that alone smoothed out this trigger tremendously. I also polished the back side of this that rides on your ramp for your Timney trigger. On the back side of the bar, I kind of deburred that as well, kind of just smoothed all that out. And another thing I ended up doing, this may only be with the Zev frame, I'm not sure, because this gun actually has a Gen 1 style trigger in it. Excuse me. It doesn't actually have the metal right here. The metal that they added to let the spring ride in it on the Timney trigger actually was interfering with the takedown lever here. And when you'd pull the trigger to actually push the takedown lever up and down, which I didn't have it cause any jamming issues. It just kind of made the trigger a little bit sluggish on the reset. So I went ahead and took a file and rounded that edge off so it doesn't touch the slide catch anymore. slide stop. And that allowed for the trigger to reset nicely. And that's one of the reasons this trigger is as good as it is without having to change the spring, is because I went ahead and smoothed everything on the inside out. But really overall, I have been extremely happy with number one, the trigger, number two, the Radian Afterburner, and number three, the entire gun, the way it sets as a whole. Very happy with this gun. It's probably, as of now, my favorite 9mm to shoot. I really still like my Bull Armory with the ported barrel, but this is a good comparison to it. They both shoot very well. My buddy actually chose this gun over the Bull after shooting both of them back to back. So that made me feel pretty good, the fact that I kind of put this one together myself. Now, let's go ahead and get into the price here a little bit, and this was the part I found kind of interesting. Like I said, would have been a little bit more of these base plates, but I didn't count that, especially after seeing what the total came up to. This gun, the way it sits with this barrel, came out to $1,776.56. So yeah, I kind of felt like after adding this up that this was meant to be built. Thought that was pretty cool, $1,776. So just thought I'd throw that in at the end of the video there. But that's really all for the Project Warhawk build here, the build series that is. You'll be seeing this gun multiple times on this channel. When I start shooting in competitions, I probably end up doing a video on the Timney trigger, and I'm also working on a video with the Radian Ramjet Afterburner kit here versus an eBay comp. So you'll be seeing this gun quite a few more times over time. And yeah, well, that's all I had for you today. Okay, if you made it this far, I just want to say thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. If you're looking for more FunNGun right now, you can click one of the 2 recommended videos there. If you're looking for more FunNGun later, you can go ahead and click that there subscribe button. I sure would appreciate it. And if you're finding me from Facebook, go ahead and click that open app button at the top to make all that a lot easier, and I'll see you next time.